Bellator 286 was easily one of the most hyped MMA events we've had recently. We got to see loads of amazing fights, and it's safe to say the fighters made quite a bit of money during the event. But if you're wondering just how much they ended up taking home, we've got all the deets for you. Stay tuned because in today's video, we'll look at the earnings of the fighters from Bellator 286. Starting off, Patricio Pitbull won the $150,000 purse by defeating his opponent Borics. Patricio Pitbull not only added another successful championship defense to his shining Bellator career, but he also earned the most money in the program. Pitbull won the Bellator 286 main event by a unanimous decision against Adam Borics on Saturday at the Long Beach Arena in Long Beach, California. The fight was shown live on Showtime, and Pitbull received a basic $150,000 bout purse with no win bonuses. Hey, we think that's still nothing to scoff at. According to ESPN, Pitbull is the third best featherweight in the world. His endurance and dependability as a top combatant have been amazing. On Saturday night, Frere was superior to all opponents in every way. He quickly supplied some precise counterattacks to Borics, secured a few takedowns, and in the third round managed to grab a flying knee from Borics and use it as a mat return. With the victory, Pitbull kept his 145-pound belt and has now successfully defended it 8 times over the course of 3 reigns. Borics successfully submitted Frere in the 5th round, but he wasn't able to do much with it. Pitbull ultimately won via submission, utilizing a Kimura attempt. Next up, we've got Adam Borics, who still had a big payday despite his loss. Borics made $100,000 for his loss against Pitbull. Pitbull and Borics both had fixed fees, so neither would have received a victory bonus for a successful performance. This is also why Adam managed to luck out with a huge paycheck even despite his loss in the fight. Following Bellator 286, the California State Athletic Commission provided MMA Fighting with the event's compensation report. It's safe to say both Pitbull and Borics went home with quite a bit of cash. But these numbers, as always, don't reflect a fighter's overall earnings, as sponsorship payments and other sources of revenue aren't made public. We can't really estimate just how much the fighters make overall, but it's safe to say that it's a lot more than the information that's made public. Up next, AJ McKee makes $100,000 and his opponent Spikes $50,000. AJ McKee won the match, cashing out a total of $100,000, whereas the defeated Spike Carlisle made around $50,000. AJ McKee made his debut in the lightweight division, and we've got to say, for the first time, he was able to put up an amazing fight. It'd sure be a memorable one for many MMA fans. The fight was a classic Bellator scrap. McKee prevailed against Spike Carlisle by majority decision. The fight served as a co-headlining entertainment at the event in Long Beach, California. McKee and Carlisle swung wildly in what appeared to be one of the most rapid-fire escalations of action in high-profile MMA history. We're sure everyone watching could feel the impact of his blows at that moment. McKee gave Carlisle, who's renowned for his chaotic, all-offensive approach, some of his own medicine. Carlisle had the upper hand when the battle first struck the ground, but McKee used leverage to turn the tables on him. Moving on to Jeremy Kennedy, who made $55,000 with a $55,000 bonus. Jeremy Kennedy won, making $55,000 in earnings with a $55,000 bonus equaling $110,000. His opponent Aaron Pico, who was defeated, wasn't too far behind. He made around $100,000. Pico's shoulder seemed to dislocate during his fight with Jeremy Kennedy. 5 minutes later, the bout was finished with Kennedy winning through doctor stoppage TKO in the opening frame at the Long Beach Arena. Pico did his best to continue fighting after the bell rang. His staff started operating on his left shoulder first, trying to reposition it right away. It seemed for a moment at least that they'd succeeded. This is because the referee instructed Pico to assume his fighting position for a brief period of time. When the cage-side doctor arrived to conduct the examination, Pico made an effort to demonstrate that his shoulder could move properly. But ultimately, the referee waved after the player spent a few minutes attempting to convince them that he could continue. It feels like a victory just wasn't in the cards for him. Lastly, a quick rundown on how much some other fighters made at Bellator 286. Juan Arculeta won a total of $100,000 with no bonuses, while the defeated Enrique Barzola got about $31,000. Juan Arculeta's victory against Barzola was definitely an interesting one. His unanimous decision victory is sure to be one for the history books. Plus, Bobby Cerrone III won the match, taking $3,000 in winnings and $3,000 in bonus. On the other hand, Miguel Pembert lost, gaining just $3,000. It's still $3,000 though, so hey, at least it's something. We've also got Islam Mamedov. He won the match, making a total of $80,000, while his opponent Nick Brown got just $24,000. JJ Wilson had a pretty significant payday with a total of $70,000 in winnings. His opponent, Vladimir Tokov, had a much smaller earning of $23,000. Khalid Murtazaliev won, earning himself a decently sized payday of $20,000 with a $20,000 bonus. His opponent, Kazimurat Bastayev, didn't go home empty-handed either. He scored around $13,000. Sumiko Inaba managed to impress with her victory. She earned about $24,000 in total. Her opponent, opponent, Nadine Mandiao, got just about $3,000, which is definitely on the lower end of the earnings we've seen so far. And with that, let's move to some related MMA news. In other news, starting off, Anthony Smith says that Khamzat Chimaev should move to middleweight for bigger fights. Even if Khamzat Chimaev is amongst the finest fighters in the world, his future in terms of weight class is still uncertain. Chimaev underwent a challenging weight cut for his UFC 279 main event matchup against Nate Diaz, but the bout had to be called off because Chimaev was 7.5 pounds above the welterweight non-title limit. Afterward, UFC President Dana White suggested Chimaev would probably be better off competing at middleweight, where he had previously competed. Anthony Smith brutalized his body for years, reducing his weight to 185 pounds before admitting he wasn't a middleweight. Smith thinks Chimaev would be better suited to give up welterweight and concentrate only on middleweight, since he's gone through the same hardships, which would make him an even more dangerous competitor. On the fighter versus the writer, Smith commented on Chimaev, "Honestly, I think he should move to middleweight." He added that taking that off his plate would allow him to develop technically and athletically much more quickly without having to suck his body down. He'd just continue to get bigger. Next up, Uriah Hall reveals post-MMA struggle with depression. Uriah Hall said that a deep depression and suicidal thoughts followed his decision to leave mixed martial arts. After an open workout for his professional boxing debut, which will take place against Le'Veon Bell on Saturday as part of the Paul vs. Silva undercard, the former UFC middleweight spoke of a new beginning after finding it difficult to define himself after MMA. At a press conference in promotion of the pay-per-view at Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona, Hall said to MMA Fighting that he spent the previous 20 years of his life dedicating himself and his soul to one trait, and then all of a sudden it was gone. He was in some really dark areas mentally, but fortunately, he had the proper people supporting him. He also said that when depressed, he even glanced at his gun and realized that he needed to find a way out of it. Hall claimed he was reluctant to discuss his difficulties because he didn't want to be seen as weak. He acknowledged that politics were involved in his decision to leave MMA and that he felt alone and under pressure from the idea that he had to be a man to get out of it. Lastly, Daniel Cormier said that Makhachev had one of the most dominant performances ever for a title challenger. Islam Makhachev showed everyone during UFC 280 how solid he truly is. One of the most eagerly awaited UFC championship fights in recent memory was featured in the main event recently. Makhachev and former champion Charles Oliveira, two of the lightweight division's most spectacular streak holders, finally got to square off, but sadly for Oliveira, it wasn't as competitive as he'd hoped. Daniel Cormier, a former teammate of Makhachev at the American Kickboxing Academy, was in charge that evening. Despite having direct experience with Makhachev in the training room, Cormier was still utterly shocked by the performance in front of the biggest audience. In an interview with DC and RC, Cormier said Islam did it against a Charles Dobronx Oliveira who was prepared and in form, but he understood exactly what he needed to do, and he felt that was demonstrated pretty early in the fight. He also added that he's been in the arm triangle with Islam. It's so close. Charles Oliveira tapped as soon as he was able to get past the guard. He added that it was one of the most impressive challenger performances he'd ever seen. That's a wrap for this video. Which fighter do you think earned their paycheck the most? Comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.